What is up everyone, it's Saber here and welcome to another Naruto What If you end up liking the video, please consider subscribing. It's free and you can take it back at any time and it really helps me out, and this is my main channel, so if you're interested in what if Naruto had Madara and the Kyuubi sealed inside of him, or what if Naruto was half Viltrumite and half Saiyan, go check out my main channel. And if you're interested in what if Naruto was a assassin in Westeros, or what if Naruto was the long lost heir to Whirlpool, go check out my third channel. And with all of the YouTube formalities out of the way, let's get into it. You look like you just had the worst night of your life, Miyuki said. She was sitting across Naruto around a table while they ate their breakfast. The look on his face was somewhat miserable and it didn't give her a good feeling. He has been pretty down since he came back from his activities, but she had already heard from Gaara that Naruto was wanted in Konoha for his recent actions. Apparently, he had run away from home. She could guess this was what was troubling his young mind. Even she wouldn't be happy if she was forced to leave her home because they didn't agree with her choices. Konoha didn't agree with what Naruto was doing, had done. They feared for their own safety and really didn't want to do anything that could spark a war, which if ignited they would surely win. Konoha was still the strongest hidden village despite its recent troubles. However, if other villages do gang up on them, they would lose. The village wasn't too big on allies. After all, allies Naruto had many of them. He could be accepted as a shinobi at any village he chose. If she was that kind of a person, she would have made a suggestion that he just join Tsunagakure or stayed by her side, but she wasn't like that. She cared for his happiness and wasn't all too greedy to pounce on him just because he was having a few problems with his home. Is it really that bad? Naruto asked tonelessly. The expression on his face was just like of one who has been deprived of sleep for at least a week, but he had only spent a single night sleepless. For someone like him, one night without sleep did nothing to his physical health or mental health. He wasn't a normal human after all. Being a Jinchuriki, though it made his life a living hell, and hell had its benefits. Today was the day he had to start with the UN conference. He should have been at Uchiha by now to welcome his guests, but he was still here trying to clear the gloomy cloud that was following him around. Compared to the cheerful person you'd become when in my presence, you look awful, she said it so bluntly, no sparing anything. It wouldn't do well to hide anything. Besides, Naruto was just like that. It was the kind of response he would have given to someone. Naruto sighed as he straightened his expression. I feel like the whole world is placed on my shoulders. Really, there was just too much to think about on this journey. He didn't want to think of how hurt Tsunade was or how his friends would react when they find out he ran away from Konoha. He didn't particularly care about what those other elders thought of his actions. He was happy with the decisions he had made. They weren't wrong. The elders were fools who only cared about Konoha and didn't give a damn about peace. There was no peace in those war-hardened minds. They only thought of protecting Konoha. Everything was about Konoha, but not to him. Want to talk about it? Naruto became silent for a few moments before he relented. A couple of years ago, I left Konoha with Jiraiya for a 3-year training trip. The trip was to help me train to become strong so that I could protect myself against S-rank criminals of the Akatsuki. If he hadn't left Jiraiya, he wouldn't be where he was at this time. He would be somewhere sitting inside a dark hole cursing his miserable existence. He may even be still oblivious to his parentage if things had gone Jiraiya and Tsunade's way. This is why he is glad he met Itachi. Had it not been for the Uchiha, he wouldn't be having something to define his existence. Peace defined his existence. That was by the time they still existed, and I'd understand why you would want to become strong. They were hunting down Jinchurikis, so your life was at risk with them around, but now it isn't much of a problem since they are no longer there. It wasn't a secret that the Akatsuki was dead. She actually felt relief that they were no longer active with them around. It meant Gaara was also at risk. Miyuki didn't see anyone who could hold Tsunagakure together at this time other than Gaara. He wasn't just a good person, he was a Jinchuriki who was powerful. His fearsome reputation quells out any thoughts of rebellion inside Tsunagakure. She wasn't a fan of using fear to rule over people, but in this case Gaara's reputation worked well for Tsunagakure and its security as well as stabilization. Naruto nodded. After I'd left Konoha with Jiraiya, I ditched him and went on separate way just to clear my mind, because someone who I considered a friend had attempted to kill me and would have succeeded if it wasn't for the Kyuubi's power. I had so much to think about as I couldn't wrap my around the idea of killing your friend just in the name of getting power. You see, I didn't even know who my parents were back then. I wasn't even told that I was Jinchuriki until someone who wanted to kill me spilled the beans. The Sandane was like my grandfather and he knew me best, yet he couldn't even tell me the reason. Everyone at Konoha looked at me with great loathing. No one even bothered to tell me who my parents were. It was his greatest pain that they chose to keep the truth away from him. Keeping him oblivious was no different than blindfolding him and setting him to walk on a bumpy journey. This just meant that he was hitting stuff he couldn't see along the way. The cruel thing was that Jiraiya and the Sandame only satisfied themselves with just watching. It must have been sad living your life without knowing your parents, or even answers to questions you had. The worst Must have been when the whole of Konoha hated you in your case, since you didn't know anything for no reason. It was cruel. They could have at least told him about why he was hated. The lack of knowledge must have driven many illusions that trapped him in an endless nightmare. Yeah, it was, Naruto said with a small sad smile. Still, I always had a smile on my face, but when I returned to my dark cave, a cold loneliness always welcomed me. Miyuki didn't say anything. She had nothing during my time away from Konoha. I learned of my parents and I was quite displeased. Displeased is a great understatement. He had been furious that the people I trusted lied to me. They allowed me to think that my parents had abandoned me because they didn't want me. They allowed me to suffer when they knew the truth. If I had known the truth, I would have never been miserable as I was. I guess something in me clicked. Then I was filled with bitterness because people I trusted were liars, and their lies had made me suffer greatly. I guess I stopped smiling too much because I was afraid that being stupid will make me miss things and people closest to me will lie again, forcing me to experience more pain. While I have grown, I am still Naruto, and nothing will change that. What has changed is my mindset. Progress for the UN comes before anything. I am willing to sacrifice everything that is in me for peace. My willingness to sacrifice everything is what makes me what I am today, and has led to this situation I am in today. It feels like I've given up on living my life for the UN. Miyuki was silent for a few moments before responding. This world has been nothing but cruel to you. Why would you seek to make it better? Naruto smiled sadly before answering. I don't know myself, but I feel that this is something I must do. It is like with Konoha, they've been nothing but cruel to me, but even so it is still my home. A part of me loathes what they did, while a part of me wishes to forgive them. This indecision in me makes my actions and behavior somewhat contradicting. I feel bad now. Miyuki said, I wanted you to talk, but I can't offer anything in return. It is quite alright, Naruto said. Talking was just fine. I don't have anyone to talk to about this subject. No one. I told you my desire for peace has made me somewhat relinquish everything. I thought it was best that I don't make any new friends and keep things to myself on this kind of path. I don't want anything to stand in the way, which is why I don't want to have anything. I am prepared to make sacrifices, but I understand letting go of things isn't easy. Naruto explained lightly. You're complicated. That was what Miyuki could say about his personality. There were just so many things that he said, and it was all complex. She understood that his desire to see his dream through and willingness to lose everything in the favor of peace has brought this kind of person in him. But like he said, he was Naruto, and he would always be Naruto. He is just more focused on his goals than anything. Miyuki thought that this personality he currently has was a result of something hope lack of rather. Naruto knows that he will lose so much on this kind of path. He knows he will be forced to do things he wouldn't do. He knows he will be forced to carry much more burdens than he has his whole life. He was already experiencing this reality. He had already killed people. His relationship with Konoha has now turned frosty, and the future for any form of personal happiness looks bleak. She was the only light, but if it was only happening now, he should have been only expressionless, lacking humor about now, not before. The fact that he was like that before this happened means that he had foreseen this happening. If he had seen this happening, then he wouldn't have given himself any hope, because he knew separating for those he cared for would hurt him. For example, if he had formed a relationship with a woman in Konoha, that relationship would be in trouble. It would also bring pain to both him and his partner. Since he couldn't be in Konoha without being apprehended, the partner would surely be questioned heavily on his whereabouts, and she would always be watched to see if he would show up or not. It appears that she does have something to say. Naruto, all your efforts to peace are not based in Konoha. Everything you have now is not within Konoha. Have you lost hope in Konoha? Is it what you wanted to give up first before anything? Naruto became thoughtful for a few moments before he responded. While I do have some friends in Konoha, nothing really ties me to the village. All that it has been to me is one big mountain that I keep falling from whenever I try to climb. I don't want to lose hope in Konoha, because if I do, it will be the end of my dream. There are far worse things than Konoha lurking in the shadows out there, but this only makes the situation hard for me because of all that the village has done to me. It's like you're stuck between two lines, Miyuki said, shaking her head. I can't say I understand everything fully, but what I can say is that don't lose hope in your own happiness. You may be trying to be like someone who seemed to be doing well, but you don't know what that person was hiding behind the shadows. This isn't you. You're a kind person who's always thinking of others rather than yourself. Don't lose your smile, because it is what keeps your identity. Without it, you're no longer what you used to be to your friends, and eventually you'll become nothing but a robot. Naruto smiled at Miyuki's words. I know that, but trying is way harder than when you say it. Nothing is ever easy, Naruto. If you need someone to help you with emotional balance, then you have me. As long as you allow me to be by your side, I will always be here and never leave you. Thanks, Naruto said quietly. As he stood up, he went to Miyuki's side and offered her his hand. Come on, we have a few hours before noon, and by then everything should be starting in Uchiha. This was happening. The first UN conference was going to commence, and he just had to say the words to begin it. Naruto felt as though the Excitement bubbling inside of him would explode into bliss that would be uncontrollable. This was just one step towards that goal. That dream, the peace movement, was only beginning now. Regardless of what has been happening over the past weeks, this was the time for him to stand up and realize his dream. The people he'd call had gathered here. They were all leaders of villages, countries. They of course had to have taken their time to come here. They didn't come here to watch the mystical whirlpools that surround the island. They came here to hear what he had to tell them, what he had promised he would deliver. These people were all here because they wanted to create a new world order, an order of peace and stability. Naruto felt proud that they had come here at his request. He felt happy that he was finally starting to move towards that goal. He wasn't just suffering for nothing, he was moving towards something. And now he couldn't just say things about the UN, he could now touch it and breathe it. Because it was all happening, Naruto looked around the podium facing with rows of different people from different villages, all sitting down in the comfortable chairs he prepared. There were quite a number of people in the hall. The Kages that were present were the Wind Shadow and the Mizukage. The Wind and Water Lords were also present in this gathering. Each Kage came with her advisors as well as other leaders within their respective villages. Even those leaders of other villages didn't come alone. The leader of Takigakure had come with about 5 representatives from the village. Tsunade had decided not to come after all, but Jiraiya, Koharu and Hamura were present along with Kakashi. Naruto guessed that they came here for no other reason than to spy on proceedings and to ensure that they were not left out of anything. It didn't matter much though, he was here to work and he would work regardless. He looks okay, Kakashi noted, sitting between Jiraiya and Koharu. For someone who was supposedly under immense stress, he looked very happy. He was even willing to bet that his Sharingan would be able to point out the flows of happiness inside of the blonde. If this is all he cares about, then he doesn't have a reason to be saddened by anything. Koharu responded mildly, this only means that he doesn't care about the situation. He has left our village and he can stand there and look so proud while our council is a mess because of him. The days are numbered though, eventually he would answer to them. Anyone who dared defy the power of Konoha's council always had to pay the price. Naruto had a lot more to answer to given the latest developments of things, and he was surely going to pay if he had any hand in it. She didn't have a problem with him away from the village though, but she still wanted him to answer to his actions and for his insubordination. The council a mess. Jiraiya's brow furrowed as he looked the elder woman on his left side with Hamura on his right. You're exaggerating, Koharu-san. I've been with the council since everything happened and I haven't seen any mess. More importantly, since Naruto's isn't with us, Iwagakure has stepped away from trouble with us, though he wouldn't like to admit the fact. It was the truth, since Naruto wasn't with Konoha anymore and he had quit his duties as a shinobi of Konoha some time ago. It meant that Iwagakure had no problem with them, but they were going after Naruto himself. Konoha was free from anything because of this. Naturally, he was worried about the target that was on Naruto, since Iwagakure was obviously out for his head. Knowing Inoki, he wouldn't rest until they eventually do get their hands on the blonde. Jiraiya feared that and he wanted to make things right. You're still defending that immature brat, I see, Koharu stated with narrowed eyes. Someone who wasn't in their conversation spoke after that. She was sitting on the road just behind the group from Konoha. That immature brat has brought all these leaders into this single place, and so far everything has been civil despite the fact that nothing has yet to start. I don't think even Kages can call upon such a great attendance like this immature brat has done. Princess Koyuki stated with a small smile. Koharu didn't respond. Koyuki Heim. Jiraiya smiled at the woman behind him. I didn't think we were speaking that loud, but it is good to see you again. If you hadn't noticed, almost everyone is waiting in anticipation for the speaker to start talking. Koyuki said, he is about to start. They all looked ahead as Naruto began to talk. Ladies and gentlemen, Kages, daimyos, leaders of all villages, I welcome you to the Island of Peace Yuzu for this historic conference, which is the first since the founding of the elemental nations. I am Naruto, president of the UN and its alliance. I have left out the family name because it has nothing to do with what we have gathered here, for I am not here as Namikaze or Uzumaki. I'm simply here as Naruto of the UN. I do apologize to those I was not able to greet personally when they reached the island. I had matters to deal with. I would also like to thank everyone who heeded this call and took their time to be here, and I assure you, you will not regret your choice. Before I got even further, I would like to repeat this to everyone. We are here for a united conference. The UN does not stand for united naivety. A few chuckles at the term graced the hall, but it stands for United Nations. We are all here because we have hope that nations can be united under one umbrella to create a better world for the future generation and reshape this flawed shinobi world. A few nods of agreement at Naruto's choice of words. Konan couldn't actually believe that this was happening, and seeing them nod in acceptance filled her with more hope for peace finally becoming a reality. The peace Nagato had so craved, the peace Yahiko had died for. This meant nothing though, but it gave her hope that something would come out of this united naivety. Where did that come from? Asked the Kazekage, who was sitting on her right side. They were sitting on the front row. It's a term some people who have no hope or desire for peace are calling this organization. Gaara said calmly, so basically when we form the United Alliance, they will be calling it the United Naivety Alliance. May concluded it was so sad that some people would actually call this naivety. While it is possible that they may not reach the whole of the elemental nations, the alliance could form a major power that installs sustainable balance that is governed by different nations who have no desire of breaking the alliance. Gaara nodded. Naruto went on with his speech. I am positive that not everyone knows the other, so I will begin with introductions first so that we can all know each other, Naruto stated. But before that I would like to outline a few rules that you will all have to follow while you're in this island. These rules are not to be broken. If they are, I will enforce proper punishment. A hand rose as soon as those words left his mouth. What do you object, Nakata-san? Naruto asked the Lord of the River Country, who had raised his hand. What are these rules that you speak of? As far as I am concerned, you didn't specify any rules before we got here, and I was told that no rule would be implemented unless agreed upon by the majority. The man sat down after his question. Officially, you agreed upon being members of the UN and its existing principles. The documents I handed to each one of you had this. I do not think that it is my duty to read out loud the fine prints, which were no hidden and written plainly. I mean no offense by that. While it is indeed true that this is a democratic organization, these simple rules were made when I formed this organization. They are not the rules of the UN per se, but they are rules of this island and this house which I govern. This house and island are only hosts to the UN, not property of the organization. This was Naruto's firm response. You still didn't answer why the rules were not specified. It wasn't necessary to say them at the time, as they are only applicable while you are in this island. This is why I am taking this time to explain them to you. But since this is democracy, if you feel that you disagree with them, even though this is my house, I will see other alternatives. Naruto said calmly. That is acceptable. Nakata said these rules are as follows. Naruto laid out the rules plainly and allowed the people to digest them. No fighting amongst the members. No provocation of any kind is permitted. Failure to comply will result on affected members either expelled from the island or the house for the duration of the meeting, or pay a fine. This will depend on the seriousness of the matter. Kakashi recited fighting may only occur if it is nothing more than a sparring match between opponents, but it must always be supervised and agreed upon by members. Talk about no nonsense ruling. This only meant that Naruto wasn't going to permit any form of fight or incidents that may cause division amongst the members. Of course, with such rules it meant that no one was going to risk it being withdrawn from the premises, meant that you were not going to take part in whatever talks were being held. It also made it more manageable because unruly people always grew out of control. No member is allowed say anything that may make the membership of a member questionable or credibility questioned without tangible proof. Real proof, not fabricated stories that have no direction. Jiraiya recited another one. This one has no punishment if you do break it. He said if all rules that were broken were punishable, it would create an illusion of you're not allowed to do anything wrong. If you do anything wrong, you will be charged. Hamura stated. Naruto is going by the thought that no one is perfect. A man said sitting just beside Hamura. He still does maintain that there are rules that must not be broken. Say for an example, if members started fighting, and here it compromises what this organization stands for. If you have a problem with someone, you're not encouraged to fight over it but to resolve it peacefully. But the rules are only applicable while in here. What about there? This are only rules of the house. More rules will surely be proposed later on so that we can all agree upon. This is democracy after all. Jiraiya responded quietly. I hope you all agree with this. If not, we will open a proposal for new rules tomorrow, Naruto said. Now with the introductions, I will start with Amigakure. Its leader is Konan-san. Konan-san, will you stand up so that these people can see you? Konan did as told. She was sitting on the third row on a chair far on Naruto's left side. Amigakure is the first official member of this organization. A round of applause as Konan sat down. Naruto introduced all leaders and representatives, one by one, until there was no one left that he hadn't introduced. It took a few moments to introduce everyone, but it had to be done. I am sure that you must all be tired. I will give you some time to explore the ruins and look at the library. Today was all about introductions. The rest will be completed tomorrow and you will be freed after that. The business of tomorrow will be the establishment of different committees that will form part of the UN, and we will create our own constitution. That is all for today. Tomorrow is the day of reckoning, Miyuki said as she remained seated on the left side of Gaara. The Sankage nodded. We will see how he handles it. He said tomorrow wasn't going to be as civil as today had been. Tomorrow everyone was going to be speaking their mind and curses were surely going to be thrown around. It will need some authority and power to maintain the ruckus that will surely grace tomorrow. I'm sure you will be fine, Mace said with a smile. Naruto-kun has this planned well. If it wasn't for the fact that he wants to do a clean sweep of security inside and outside the island, proceedings would have started today. Isn't it safe? It is May said, but this is the first time this island has held this thing, and Naruto wants to ensure that all the security measures he set up are working perfectly and also ensure that no one is doing anything they aren't supposed to. I doubt anyone will be able to do anything though. Temari said communication with the outside world is cut off and nothing inside goes out unless he gives the word. Some may not have noticed, but there are other people inside the island watching over things. She had already tested things and it was impossible get anything outside. It almost felt like every movement outside the walls of their given residence was being monitored with a watchful eye. These other people are the security forces, Maid said, standing up. Now if you'll excuse me, I must speak with Naruto-kun. Miyuki looked at the Kage for a few moments until she reached Naruto. He seems rather fond of her, she said, looking at Naruto's smile. He is like that to everyone. Gaara gave a quick response. Besides, they've been working together on this before I was even told, so it is only natural that they get along. May and Naruto. May Naruto acknowledged the presence of the woman with a smile. The people don't seem to be in much of a hurry to leave the hall. May stated no one had yet to leave the hall ever since Naruto adjourned the meeting. Perhaps they were waiting for something, but she wanted to take advantage of the situation, it seems. So Naruto said, what do you have in mind? A little sparring match to show everyone your power. Personally, it will help over your authority when things heat up tomorrow, and no one will undermine you for your age, the Mizukage suggested wisely. Naruto smiled. I truly do like the way you think, chairwoman, he said. You're in a good mood. May noted there's no reason to be depressed, Naruto responded before clapping his hands to get everyone's attention. I have a proposal, which I am sure you'll all like later. Jiraiya stood still at a remote clearing within the coast of Yuzu. The other leaders and representatives were standing just away from him under the trees as they watched. He was going to do battle with Naruto, a leader of this organization that has brought them together. He couldn't deny that such an opportunity to fight Naruto had never been on his wish list. The blonde had always denied him the opportunity, but when the chance came he had been quick to pounce on it. What they were doing was a little exhibition match just to keep everyone entertained. That was how it looked on the outside, but it wasn't like that when you looked underneath. Naruto was hoping to do well against him, a world-renowned Sannin. If he did well, it would only confirm his position as leader of this organization. He wasn't going to make it easy though. No way in this world. Why did you take this chance, Jiraiya-san? Naruto asked, standing in front of the Sannin. The place they were in was just a clear ground with trees on the side of the island, while there was a wall along the sea line. The songs of the sea and the twisting whirlpools could be heard and seen from this place. When he offered an opportunity to do battle with someone, Jiraiya had jumped on to take the opportunity, even when Kakashi had raised his hand as he too wanted to take it. But since Jiraiya was a Sannin, everyone agreed that it was best to test this peace seeker. With a Sannin like Jiraiya, he wasn't at all afraid of the Sannin's power. He could match whatever Jiraiya offered to him. After all, you knew full well that I would take up this opportunity, Jiraiya retorted. Naruto merely smiled. Though my question still stands, even if he had known the Sannin would want to take the chance, that didn't mean that Jiraiya was obliged to make his wish come true. The man chose to come here into this stage on his own. No one forced him to do it. You didn't take our previous battle seriously, and you've always avoided fighting me. This is my chance, since you can't run away, not when those people are watching. The Sannin smirked. I see, Naruto begun. Then you have me backed against the corner. What an uneasy situation I find myself in. Naruto was being a lot more lively and calm about this than he would have expected, considering that their last meeting wasn't a happy one. He was expecting the blonde to be in a different mood than this. He had not even called him simply as Jiraiya. It has been Jiraiya-san. This only gave him the idea that Naruto had put all personal matters aside to focus on the UN. I am still surprised that you'd permit it when I beat you down. The confidence in you by all these people will dip. Do not make the mistake that I will take it easy on you and allow you some free hits. It wouldn't look good on Konoha if I did that, Jiraiya said as he took a stance. For the first time since I returned from my 3-year training trip, I will be fighting at 100%. I have never been able to fight seriously and at my full potential because of conflicting views in my mind, but my head is clear now and I am quite a bit excited. Naruto took his own stance. Anything half-cooked and you will not return to Konoha as Jiraiya of the Sannin, but as an old washed-up Jiraiya living in past glories. Before Jiraiya could muster his retort, Conan the Proctor spoke. Okay, that is enough now, she said calmly. This is not a battle to death, so avoid inflicting major damages to each other, because we are want to attend that meeting tomorrow. She paused to look at each. Begin. Naruto didn't make a move. He stood still in his stance while Jiraiya did the same. It may look like nothing was happening, but they were actually looking for openings in each other's stance to exploit. Unfortunately for either, Naruto's taijutsu was polished perfectly while Jiraiya was far more experienced to be showing openings. Not when the physical battle had yet to begun. The psychological battle was already at large. In the blink of an eye, both Naruto and Jiraiya disappeared from the respective positions the second they both Appeared they were close to each. Naruto threw a left hook at Jiraiya while his feet were on the ground. The Sannin leaned back to avoid the fast-coming punch before he edged closer to Naruto again. His own right hand charged with a strong fist formed as it moved towards Naruto's head from his left side. The blonde blocked the punch by raising his left hand. He didn't allow Jiraiya to mount another punch before he could throw his own attack. His right foot was raised at around waist level and a kick was sent towards the Sannin, who made the distance to avoid the kick. Once Jiraiya landed down on the ground after jumping back when he avoided Naruto's kick, blonde was right in front of him again. His left foot was raised high for a high kick which was blocked by Jiraiya's left hand, not allowing the blonde to be the only on the offense. The Sannin also went for a high kick with his right foot just as he had blocked Naruto's kick with his left hand. The blonde did the same before either could make the distance from each other. Naruto flicked a finger from his right hand straight at the Sannin. A bullet of wind pummeled Jiraiya straight on his chest and sent him airborne. Naruto followed after the Sannin and spun around in midair before the Sannin could hit the ground. He sent a forceful spinning kick straight at Jiraiya's face, but the Toad Sage brought both his hands together in the front to shield from the kick. Despite blocking the kick, he was still sent further backwards, but gravity was already taking its course when that happened, and he ended up sliding on the ground backwards for a few feet before coming to a halt. He didn't even get a chance to breathe as Naruto appeared a little over on his left side. The blonde quickly twisted around and aimed a high kick at his face again on automatic defense. Both the Sannins were held up in time to lock the danger. Jiraiya still managed to block the kick with both his hands. The force behind the kick was enough to push him back slightly. Wind breakthrough, no hand seals. Not even a single hand seal was formed when Naruto released the jutsu. Even so, great gusts of winds moved towards Jiraiya, who wasn't that far from them since he was only pushed back a little by Naruto's kick. The Sannin quickly did a replacement technique to replace himself with a log since there were trees nearby. Naruto's jutsu hit the log and sent it crashing aside from the clearing before Naruto could think of searching for Jiraiya's location. The Sannin blurred into sight behind him, but Naruto was just as quick enough to twist hurriedly to block a high kick that was aimed at the back of his head. The blonde suppressed a wince when Jiraiya's kick collided with both his hands. The man kicked really hard. Jiraiya followed this up with another left-footed high kick which Naruto leaned back a little to avoid since he didn't want to block another hit from the Sannin. Jiraiya jumped back a little. Once he landed down the ground, he took off like a bullet, shooting straight at Naruto. The blonde simply raised his right hand with open palm facing the incoming Sannin and didn't make another move. When Jiraiya reached Naruto, he twisted to the left before returning with a high right foot kick. The kick never reached Naruto as it was blocked by an invisible barrier. Knowing that Naruto was a wind user, Jiraiya didn't have to second guess what had blocked his kick. The Sannin quickly jumped back, creating some considerable distance between him and the blonde. "You're way more focused than I've ever seen you," Jiraiya said, looking straight at Naruto's eyes. Everything was guarded heavily. His expression and body language revealed nothing to him. "I told you I haven't been more free than I am today." Naruto gave a calm response to Jiraiya's statement. "I guess I should get serious then." "Well, more serious than before." He wasn't underestimating Naruto the least. In the blink of an eye, Jiraiya blurred of sight before appearing behind Naruto. A left hook was thrown at the blonde, who was able to twist around and block the punch before it could hit him. Jiraiya didn't stop there. He waved his left foot, aiming it high at Naruto. The blonde caught Jiraiya's foot with both his hands. Surprised Jiraiya didn't show it as he jumped a little, using his right foot as balance before he drove a high kick at Naruto's face. Naruto's was forced to free Jiraiya's left foot so that he could put both his hands in a crossed position to block the midair kick from Jiraiya. When the kick connected with his hands, Naruto suppressed again as pain shot through his wrists while he was propelled backwards by the kick. Jiraiya didn't Naruto the time to rest. While the blonde was still being pushed by the momentum of his kick, he darted towards him in blinding speeds. He jumped above ground and spun around before aiming a right-footed kick at Naruto, whose still hand is raised, put in the crossed position. The kick connected with Naruto's defense, but this time the blonde was sent sailing away backwards. Naruto flipped several times in midair before hitting the ground and his knees. Jiraiya was again at him. He was above him and sent a back heel kick crashing down at him. Naruto looked up. Line barrier. He created a barrier above him to shield himself from the incoming kick from the Sannin. Jiraiya's kick connected with the wind barrier but failed to break through, forcing Jiraiya to jump back to create some distance. When he landed down the ground, he was already going through hand seals fire style. Great fireball, no jutsu. The Sannin expelled a large fireball at the still kneeling Naruto. The blonde quickly stood up and held out his right hand. Wind barrier, he muttered. The large fireball collided with the wind wall and accumulated They're in a heap, increasing the heat around Naruto. The wind defense didn't allow the fire jutsu to break through before Naruto flicked his middle finger on his right hand. The fire jutsu exploded to create a large ball of fire before dying down in a matter of seconds. Fire-style dragon's breath. Jiraiya suddenly yelled, appearing behind Naruto. Naruto twisted around while throwing 3 kunais above Jiraiya. After that he went through fast hand seals. The space/time barrier formed in front of him and swallowed the stream of flames that was coming towards him. Once swallowed, Naruto held a single hand seal before the kunais he had thrown past Jiraiya. They were all above him. A stream of flame shot from between the kunais fast down at the Sannin. Jiraiya cursed before barely dodging the jet stream of flames that hit the ground. He once stood. The heat of the flames had caught him since he was only able to dodge just in time. Any second later, he would have been burned. Literally wind-style wind vortex. The technique was formed after observing Kiba's Garuga. It created a spinning wind vortex that blazed towards the opponent. It was also capable of drilling through anything. It made it highly dangerous. Jiraiya did hand seals of his own earth-style mud wall. He yelled as he slammed his hands to the ground, but nothing happened. His eyes widened when Naruto's jutsu kept closing the distance between them, and his jutsu wasn't coming up. It shouldn't be like that, and he had depended on the jutsu to shield him from the dangerous-looking attack. The Sannin held out both his hands in front of him in a crossed position to form at least a shield, but the attack never reached him. Naruto snapped his fingers, dispersing the wind vortex as he knew it would make the Sannin bleed heavily. Jiraiya was surprised nonetheless. He didn't show it as he asked the question, "What happened?" Naruto shook his head. "It is part of a security measure. I put throughout the island any chakra that is channeled through the ground is absorbed." In another way to explain it, you can't use any form of ninjutsu that requires you to use the ground. Isn't that going a little too far? Even it is for security reasons. Naruto shrugged. "Our sparring session is over," the blonde said. Jiraiya looked with curiously, but he got what he meant when his left foot crushed the ground beneath it, burrowing down. His eyes widened. He couldn't move it. "What? When I caught your foot after you tried kicking me, I applied a seal on it. It is only taking effect now," Naruto said. "You're a Sannin, and since you weren't underestimating me like last time, I figured this was the best way to end this without either one of us bleeding. Obviously you wouldn't want to be beaten, and the same would be for me. I understand the need to be in perfect condition for tomorrow, but I had expected for the battle to end differently. You made it sound like you were going to give me everything in the beginning," Jiraiya said, trying to pull his foot from the ground. Naruto held out his right hand and long blade appeared on his palm in a puff of smoke. "There are different tactics to winning a fight, Jiraiya. You know this well," he said as he started walking towards the Sannin. "The strongest doesn't always win, and flashing jutsus of all elements isn't why we battle. Burning all your chakra for the thrill of it serves no purpose to me, and this island has already seen too much blood. I wish not for this ground to drink any more human blood. First, it was no fights permitted in here, and then the seal that made it impossible to utilize the ground for ninjutsu, and now this." It almost felt like Naruto treated this island as some holy ground of his. What was now obvious to him was that Naruto really loved Uchiha more than any land. He did say this was his property, not property of the UN, and I only said those words to motivate you into fighting seriously, Naruto finished with a wide smile that only reminded the Sannin of the old Naruto. Jiraiya was thoughtful for a few moments before speaking. "Your other reason to stage this was not see who was the strongest. You catch on fast," Naruto said before placing his blade on Jiraiya's neck. "The UN is composed mainly by small villages who don't have as much offensive power as the great villages. I was just trying to show them that even though they might not be as powerful as you, they can still play on the same field. Power alone doesn't define things, but the ability to think and use the little power you have perfectly can result in great things while adding flaunting your fuinjutsu skills and quick thinking. You outmaneuvered and encountered everything I threw at you before. A simple thing brought me down," Jiraiya added. Naruto didn't lose his smile. "As long as you have chakra, that seal will remain active unless you find a way to remove it or flood it with senjutsu to break it," he said. "Do you want to give up, or should I pummel you without making you bleed?" The smile was all that a memory. Naruto's quarters. "You really do look a bit different," Mei said, sitting on a couch across Naruto. Between them was a table with a few documents spread all over. "Is there a woman in your life? When a man starts brightening up like this, you expect there to be a woman behind the smile." He wasn't indifferent as he usually was when he spoke to her. He had been practically glowing with happiness when he was standing in front of his guests at the hall. The air around him didn't feel as it always did, but he was still calm and relaxed as he had always been. "We're starting something big, Chair. I think we should all be happy. Although this means nothing, it is something nonetheless," Naruto responded. "Kages only meet in their summits when there is a major issue that threatens each of their villages, but today we gathered leaders from different villages, and they came. There is also nothing that is threatening them. It is indeed a good step forward, but I think there is something behind that smile." Naruto only smiled before changing the subject so that they can return to work. Sure has only been able to recruit 35 trustworthy shinobi. As I told you, they were some of them within the security forces within this island. For all our projects to come through, we have to gather more forces who will be stationed around the nation. Sure's expertise in information gathering reduces the number of forces we must place for the United Nations police force, as we will only have to send forces to places of high danger. Even so, there must be more on standby. The UN had to have its own forces to battle against injustice and evil within the nations or borders of its members. While Sure was running a recruitment program, they needed more shinobi because the police force wasn't the only force the UN was going to establish. There had to be different factions of forces to maintain order and justice in the lands within the UN's map. According to Chapter 4 of the UN Charter Section 5, all members with shinobi are to contribute a small number of shinobi they can offload to make up for the UN's forces. May said the UN's charter was written by Naruto himself, but there was a problem. The thing is, we don't know if members will agree to it. Even if the majority agree, those least will still not be pleased, and it may cause problems. Naruto nodded. This is why I want to make amendments to the charter and get more recruits, not directly from the members. If we open up a recruitment office, we can get some applicants who we will train to conform to the laws and regulations of the UN. That is more like creating an academy for UN purposes. Main used for the long-term plan. I think establishing our own academy will be more effective, as it will decrease the reliance on shinobi from members. I'd thought of something like that myself. Naruto said shinobi from other villages will come with the ways of their own villages, and it will be difficult to change their attitudes and mentality. But if there is an academy of our own, we can shape future officers in the way of the UN. There's really more work to be done. May side funding for all projects will also be a major issue that we will need to sort out. For now we're okay, but once the projects start, you're going to run dry. Kiri is stable, but I can't afford to be making large withdrawals. It is quite alright. Naruto waved his right hand in a dismissive manner. We will think of something else. Nevertheless, the shinobi we will hire have to be paid by us, and if we have a large number of personnel, the wages bill will be big. Yuzu's riches are still good, and I've collected more millions through other means. Other means would be collecting bounties of criminals that were roaming around the world. Naruto had known that all these would require large amounts of capital to kickstart, and there was a possibility that members would be stingy with their money. They had to see the effectiveness of the organization first, before willingly signing checks. There are so many things to deal with, but nations outside of the shinobi world are also moving on forward with curiosity. Sure intercepted a message from the princess of the demon country. It didn't say what she wanted, but she wanted to speak with me. I will head there after I've handled some things. At least we have sorted out how things go tomorrow. May said, I just hope that nothing unexpected happens, because things will become tricky when you start announcing plans and selecting committee members. Whether expected or unexpected, we will have to deal with it all. Naruto responded calmly. I have been preparing for the day for quite a while now, and if I can't manage things tomorrow, then I will not be able to manage things as we proceed. If you want to build a strong dynasty, your groundwork must be firm, and I will ensure that I stamp down my authority if the need be. There were people who liked going south when others were going north, and Naruto knew that tomorrow there were going to be many things said. If he goes on to mention of the plans he hopes to create, he could just end with selecting the different committees within the organization to complete its structure and leave the rest for later. But it was best to get it all now while I'm also here. If it becomes a need be for me to impose, I will be beside you. I am going to chair the executive committee after all. Naruto appreciated it. I don't know what I would do without you, May. It was probably the first time he called her by her name. I can only hope that our relationship strengthens. So far we've been keeping it business, though we do drift out of topic sometimes, but there has never been anything much more up close. May furrowed a brow. Are you saying that you want a more personal relationship with me? Naruto wasn't shy about it. He gave a nod. Gaara is my friend. I can call his home my home, but the same cannot be said for you, and I believe that if we are going to work together in a more effective manner, then we must know each other a bit more. I also see no harm getting close. You didn't seem like you wanted to get close to anyone when you came to me. Naruto smiled sadly. I have been doing a lot of thinking since the whole mess with Konoha, and I realize attachments do get you somewhere. Being a robot only turns into a cold-hearted person with no emotions. I can't lead this movement without emotions and happiness in me. The blonde paused for a moment before continuing. Don't you agree with them? Naruto trailed off when Miyuki walked into his quarters. She was supposed to be staying within the quarters of Sand. Each country had its own place to stay, and he had left her with the Sand siblings. She had not told him of anything about coming here. He had also told her he would be working for most of the night. May looked at the daimyo with curiosity. The green-haired was standing still a little away from the sitting room. Sorry to budge in like this. I didn't think you had company, Miyuki said with a small smile. May stood up and yawned. They'd been working for a few hours now. And it was really tiring. You owe me lunch after the conference, Naruto-kun, she said. Naruto smiled. I'll be happy to oblige. I might even do you better. You've been a big help. After all, it will be a date then, and we will talk more about that subject. She winked at him before looking at Miyuki. A small smile graced her lips like she was only doing it to see Miyuki's reaction. I'll see you tomorrow. Let me walk you out, Naruto said as he too stood up. Mei shook her head. Don't worry, I am staying on the floor below. You forget, she said before bowing a little to Miyuki. Daimyo-sama, she greeted politely. Mizukage Dano. It was Miyuki's stiff response. Mei didn't mind. She merely walked away with a smile on her face. Miyuki's gaze fell upon Naruto, who was smiling at her. She slowly started walking towards him. So you've been working with her for a few hours. She is comfortable enough with you to call you Naruto-kun, and you located her downstairs. Naruto smiled nervously. I sense that you have a problem with that. Miyuki shook her head. Not at all. I don't have a problem with you working alone with a beautiful and single woman like the Mizukage. Why would you think I have a problem with that unknown location? Sasuke looked at his surrounding with a calculating gaze on his face. He was in an underground hideout, and he didn't know where the place he was currently standing at was. A dark hall that had no lights, but his eyes could only see Jubi sitting on a throne, with legs folded, a black gaze watching him carefully. Why did you bring me to this place? Sasuke demanded. He was done asking nicely the moment he decided Danzo wasn't needed. He had seen it fit that he no longer be asking nicely for questions he needed answered. First, let me start by introducing myself. I am Yamamoto Shinji. I was just a normal shinobi before I met Orochimaru, and things happened after that. Shinji said. Jubi, why did you call yourself that? That is a story for another. I am sure you're wondering what my goal is, but that is also for another day. Sasuke glared at the lack of answers. What I can tell you is that I've made contact with all Jinchurikis except for 3. Nothing fruitful came out though, as Naruto had already contacted them all. You see, I respect the powers of a Jinchuriki, and I wanted to use them. I have also been playing with Naruto to try to see if he can really control the Kyuubi's power, which I see as a threat, but I have discovered that he can't. He is the only one of the Jinchurikis who can't control the powers of the Bijou inside of him. If he was able, then I would have killed him. Since I have found all that I wanted, I can begin my project. Shinji stood up from his throne and walked towards Sasuke. There is another Bijou without a Jinchuriki. I want us to fetch it. Sasuke folded his hands across his chest. I never agreed to do anything with you, and all you've told me is your name and interest in the powers of the Bijous, and I thought you wanted to fight your brother. He sounded disappointed and actually shook his head. Time skip. Jiraiya-sensei, is there any particular reason you chose to sit here after leaving your people? Konan asked calmly, looking at the toad sage at the corner of her eyes. The Sannin was sitting between her and the Mizukage, while his fellow Konoha representatives were sitting on the second row. The man had hurried to ensure that he was seated on this chair. She liked to believe that there was a particular reason for this choice. Can I sit beside my former student without a motive? Jiraiya asked with a smile. No matter what, he just couldn't help himself. This was the best seat in the house, a seat between Konan and Mei Terumi. Just sitting here, he could touch both women and ogle their chests all he liked in different angles. If you weren't a pervert, it wouldn't be a problem, Mei responded for Konan with her arms folded across her chest. The glances the man was sending at her front weren't so subtle, and it wasn't amusing anymore. She just wished that Naruto could hurry up and start proceedings. If he engages things, they would be solely focused on him to hear what he has to say. Then again, Jiraiya was a self-proclaimed super pervert. He could take advantage of the situation to ogle them as much as he pleased. It would have been even more of a disaster if he was the one standing on the podium. The worst would be if he was in charge of security. Mei didn't even want to think what he would have been doing if he was in charge of the security of this place. It was good that Naruto kept himself in charge of security within the island. I may be a pervert, but this isn't the time for that now, is it? He failed miserably to appear serious when it became obvious. He sighed and turned to Konan. How are you? Konan, I didn't get a chance to speak to you after my sparring session with Naruto. Well, it was a simple response from Konan that nearly made Jiraiya frown. You seem good as always, she noted. Well, you can't really keep an old dog down, can you? Before Konan could respond, Naruto cleared his throat while standing in the center stage. Can I have your attention please? He said. I'm glad that you're all able to return for this day safely. Today is that day where you will all know just what is the UN and the UNA. As I said them separately, they are different things. They are two different structures. The UN simply stands for United Nations, and it is the one that has gathered you into this place. The United Nations is an organization that seeks to unite nations and build upon a world that is both safe and stable for this generation and the future generation. We hope to lead the world into a peaceful era and maintain that peace as well as justice. I founded the UN with the purpose of ending the meaningless conflicts that have consistently bathed this world in blood we all suffer during and after war. It doesn't matter if you're the winner of the war. The absolute truth is that we all lose something. The problem becomes when one starts thinking their pain is greater than others. Nothing but vengeance and hatred is born from such attitude. The UN is born to put an end to it. The United Nations Alliance is a body under the UN. Its core objective is to unite all nations and form good relations between allied nations. The alliance will be an agreement between all of us. We will agree and sign on it to work together to improve the lives of those villages you all lead, to form healthy relationships with nations near and far. In doing so, we reduce the chances of conflicts. The alliance that will be formed will not be for the benefit of a certain village, but it will be for the benefit of all allied nations. In this alliance we will form treaties and share that which we can to make this world a better place. As allied nations you will be obliged to shield each other for protection against anything that will appear harmful. The UN will oversee the alliance. It will act like a watchdog of the UNA to ensure that everything runs smoothly. If anything goes wrong or any nation violates the terms of the alliance, the UN will act according to the laws that will bind all nations under the UNA. Say for example, if Sunagakure violates its alliance with Kiri and cause a friction between the villages, depending on the seriousness of the matter, sanctions and fines will be imposed on Sunagakure. We will gather the executive committee of the UNA and discuss the matter. Depending on the sanctions imposed, all members are obliged to adhere to them. Failure to do so, violating the agreement. An example of a sanction that can be imposed for violating the agreement will be banning the village from making any trade or receive missions from any of the members of the UNA, and any existing trade or treaty with a member of the UNA will be suspended until the time for the sanction imposed expires. Make no mistake, the UN will ensure that none of the aforementioned occur. If you violate someone, you will have to answer for it. That time where the bigger man does wrong and gets away with it is over. Silence greeted the hall, as all representatives digested all that Naruto had said, though Koharu wouldn't admit it. Ensuring that alliances were not broken seemed like it was going to work. Over the past years peace treaties were formed, but they rarely meant something, since villages would tear them apart once they'd recovered their exhausted armies. Another war would loom soon enough. The main reason these peace treaties meant nothing was because there was nothing or anyone powerful enough to see that these peace treaties are followed. But now there was a powerful force that would ensure that anything agreed upon would be followed. Even if Konoha was the strongest village, if it violated any agreement, it couldn't fight against the combined forces of 2 great villages and more than 7 other shinobi villages. Koharu also believed that Naruto had his own army, perhaps more like an elite army. He wouldn't be so sure to say he would enforce the laws without power. He alone couldn't do it, but if there was a more powerful army to back him up, it would surely mean that whatever sanction imposed, even a village like Konoha would be forced to follow. The sanctions were also another matter. The rules were made so that no one allied be willing to give a hand to the sanctioned village unless one wished to face punishment. Those kinds of sanctions would only drive the economy of the sanctioned village into a corner, making things tight. She wouldn't give Naruto a hand for it, but everything so far appeared to have been well thought. Did you have a hand in these? Jiraiya asked, eyeing the Mizukichi beside him. As far as he was concerned, there was no one other than her who was more familiar with the structure of the UN and its alliance. As much as I would like to take the credit, I will have to allow this to skip me. It wasn't my doing, but it was the president's. He thought of everything. Mei said with a small smile. You haven't heard nothing, though. There is still much more. He is only covering things in general. Jiraiya looked back at Naruto. If he actually did this on his own, then he surely has grown up. Treaties were regarded as nothing when wars were looming large, but Naruto had set things in a way that even if one thought of doing wrong, there would have to think of the consequences of their actions. With things put like this, all nations will be equal. There will be no nation that will comfort itself in its superiority. Once we're all aligned, only the law of the UN will be superior to all nations. Jiraiya said that is exactly what he is gunning for. Conan said bigger nations have the tendency of overlooking the smaller nations and have no qualms in using us or our lands to fuel their own objectives. She had seen it in all her life. Amigakure was used as a battleground when the great shinobi villages were at war. It was always like that, and it resulted in pain and great losses in their part. The worst thing was that these great villages fail to recognize as their wrong actions. Their pain is always greater, and they always get away with all injustice, because the smaller nations can't pick up a fight with them. But this journey was going to change all that. The UN would ensure that there is no injustice that is not punished, nothing wrong that is left as it is. They were going to correct all flaws and ensure that all who do injustice were brought before the jury and held accountable for their actions. There would no longer be free run for those who do evil and think they can get away with it. Jiraiya was no stranger to any of these. He had taken part in some of the battles. After all, even Konoha was guilty for many unjust actions. Yes, the past actions for Konoha left a bitter taste on his mouth. It was this cause that left him without a response to Conan. The problem with nations who are guilty of injustice is that each time they do something, they always have reasons to justify themselves. This is where hypocrisy starts, because once you make excuses to justify your actions, you will never see the wrong you do, and you will always be the victim. The UN is there to ensure that no one makes excuses for any injustice and all will be brought to justice, Naruto said as he continued. A hand from the third was raised and Naruto permitted the woman who'd raised the hand to speak. Bringing those who violate the alliance depends on the willingness of the members to agree for an action to be taken. But what if a stronger nation is at fault and the smaller ones are afraid to take action because they rely too much on the stronger village? What would be the cause of action when the situation comes to that? It won't be the Unified Nations forces that will take action, but it will be the UN that will take action. I've already told you the UN will overlook the alliance to ensure that everything is in order. If there is proof that a village went beyond its boundaries, we will be within our rights to take action. Naruto gave his response. Jiraiya could see the problem in that Naruto didn't have an army with which he could enforce any law, and it would have to be an army that would be strong enough to repel any assault from any village by Unified Nations forces. Jiraiya guessed it was an army that would be formed following shinobi from members of the alliance. If villages aren't cooperating, then there would be no army to work with. There was also something else that Naruto wasn't saying plainly, but if one listened carefully you would know. Even though the UNA's NEC will be called to discuss what is to happen, a member violated the alliance, the UN could still act regardless of the stance of the NEC. As long as the UN could prove that laws were broken, they could do what they pleased. As if reading Jiraiya's mind on his earlier thoughts, Tazuna spoke his thoughts. You have no army to speak of, so you will have to forgive me. That doesn't give me any assurance. Naruto smiled, seeing that even Tazuna, who represented the wave country, was not willing to hold any punches. You don't need an army to ensure that things go your way, the blonde said, with a small smile, but if it's power that will be needed, I have plenty. Before anyone could retort or scoff, Naruto released his chakra to the extreme, causing many within the hall to freeze. Cracks appearing on the wooden stage were audible to all ears. The thick flow of chakra forced into submission the atmosphere within the hall. It wasn't much of a killing intent, just pure chakra. If you had used much of my raw chakra, the reaction would have been worth the effort. Then this Kurama said within Naruto's head, but the blonde wisely ignored the comment. I also have the Kazekage, the Mizukage, and an elite fighting force that includes at least 4 Jinchurikis. Naruto continued from where he left off. I would like all to be open, so if you have any question you'd like to ask, please ask. Koharu was the first to open her mouth. It was almost as if she'd been waiting for the opportunity to present itself. Before I ask any question, what position do you hold? I lead the core body, the UN, as its founder, and I'm also a member of the UNA's NEC. I hold no voting power within the committee, though. Naruto gave his response. I see, the elder said. You're marked as an S-rank criminal in the bingo book of Iwagakure, and you're also wanted from Konoha for questioning. Isn't it that you fled from the village? That was the type of thing that Mei was praying wasn't going to be said. She was certain that this was only being done just to discredit Naruto in his leadership of the UN. She didn't think that Konoha would try to usurp him for power and try to lead this organization, though she didn't know how Naruto would answer this one. Mei held faith in him to answer in a pleasing way. Naruto didn't deny anything or act oblivious. He responded honestly but in a slight stern tone. I do not think it is a secret that Iwagakure has painted a bounty for my head. Yes, I did flee from Konoha, but only because I was dealing with people who didn't want reason, and I had more important matters to handle than worrying about matters that can be resolved at any time of the day. He said, now that has been made obvious to everyone, what is your question? Koharu-san, do you think you're worthy for leadership? In fact, who is to say that IWA won't attack any village that is allied to you just to get to your actions when facing the IWA army? Also, don't depict that of a person preaches peace instead of trying to resolve things by just knocking them out. You butchered them. Koharu took her seat. After that, a pregnant silence settled, and after a few seconds Naruto finally responded, so you're saying because I butchered shinobi who were on the move to attack a peaceful village, I am not worthy of leadership? Naruto's tone was very stern. I will admit that I could have chosen a better alternate, and it would have been the better choice. However, if you think that disqualifies me as leader, then I must question if you really are a war veteran. Koharu-san, if you think that only pure faultless men must lead this organization, then point he that is capable of leading the UN and has no faults. You're not Holly. Koharu, shinobi have their hands full of blood, but if you say I am wrong, correct me. Silence, absolute silence. You all must understand that we not all perfect beings. Humans are flawed species. This is why we have created the law that will teach us the just ways. I never said I was faultless, and I never said I couldn't make a mistake. What differentiates me from many people is that I am willing to admit my mistakes and seek to correct them, Naruto said, to which those who knew him nodded in agreement. Meanwhile, Wave Country, it was understandable why Orochimaru could be scowling so deeply at this time of the day. He had after all been trying to sneak into the land hidden in whirlpools, and all attempts had resulted in ultimate failure. For someone like him, that was just unacceptable, especially since a brat created the damn dome-like barrier that covered the whole island. He didn't think that Naruto could have been so advanced in seals that he could create a barrier that even he couldn't break without his presence being found, as well as his location. Just by merely being in contact with the damn barrier, his presence was already known to whoever was controlling it. He could get into any village and leave as he wills without anyone knowing he was Orochimaru after all, and yet he couldn't sneak his way through to Yuzu. While we may not have been able to get into the island, as soon as the leaders returned to their nations, we will know what they were discussing. Kabuto offered something for his master to console, but even he knew it wouldn't do at this stage. Orochimaru was more disturbed by the fact that he couldn't outsmart Naruto and gain access to his island. I'm aware of that, Kabuto, Orochimaru said flatly. Naruto uses the island as his base for all operations. This means that everything that Naruto plans and wants hidden is buried in the island. I am also aware that he won't tell those fools everything. There are some things that he will keep hidden. Everything has its own darkness, Kabuto said. Orochimaru guessed that Naruto had his own darkness, and the reason he went all out to protect the island is because he wants his secrets hidden. Orochimaru nodded. You cannot forget that Naruto is also involved with wanted criminals. If something like that got out, it would put him at odds with those who trust him. The snake Sannin paused for a moment. If you want to work with someone in something important, what do you do first? The obvious thing Kabuto could think of is gathering all intel about that person. Obviously, when you gather intel, you're bound to find many things you didn't wish to see, but that all depended on how good Naruto was when it came to collecting information. Are you saying that Naruto might have intel you might need? Maybe it was a bet, but he wasn't betting too much on it. There are so many things that Naruto surely has in his possession. Village leaders trust him. It wouldn't be a surprise to me if he has blueprints of all nations allied with him for their protection. It was possible that Naruto may have gathered every little bit of information he could get. Aside from that, it was a wonder to Orochimaru that Naruto chose Uzushiogakure of all places. If his instincts were true, there was something hidden beneath the place. After the island was invaded during the Second Shinobi World War, there were no spoils of war. It was like those people destroyed everything. Continuing, Orochimaru spoke. I am far more. And the Sannin trailed off when Jubi flashed into existence in front of him and Kabuto. They were walking slowly in the coastal regions of the Wave Country, just a little away from the harbor. I didn't think that even a snake couldn't find its way into Yuzu. Jubi spoke monotonously. Some distance was between him and Orochimaru and the snake's subordinate. Isn't that I couldn't? Orochimaru corrected. I could get inside. There is just no way of entering without my presence being detected. The fact that you're also here means that you also failed. He added that last part with a smile. Kabuto merely pushed his glasses up a bit as he watched things unfold between his master and the weapon. My failure is irrelevant. Jubi shrugged. I didn't come here for that. He said it is good that you are still well. Orochimaru, you were on your way to join your parents in the world of the dead. Orochimaru snarled at the man before him. A simple attack like that couldn't kill me, he said. If you have trouble believing that I can give you a free shot. A taunting tone was used to goad Jubi into attacking. Jubi walked towards Orochimaru silently before halting a few inches from the snake. Sannin, just because you stole the Sharingan and added a few upgrades to boost your power doesn't mean that you've become stronger than me. Orochimaru, he said so casually, like it was the obvious thing. The only reason you're alive is because I allowed you. If I wanted, I could have killed you back then, but I allowed you to live because you will serve a purpose. Orochimaru merely chuckled in response. Says the weapon I created. Jubi ignored the statement in favor of his own agenda. I have my plans which will need your services. I don't like you and you don't like me. After the plans plays out, you're free to pathetically attempt to kill me, but before that, if you make any attempts, I will kill you again. Orochimaru chuckled, this time a bit more madly. You cannot kill me, Shinji-kun. I know everything about you, more than you do. I did create you after all. Shinji seemed to nod before turning around. Yes, and I haven't made any improvements, and I have not upgraded my power. It was quite the opposite. Really, all Orochimaru had to do was remove the knot, and he had the true meaning of that statement. He didn't get a chance to query further, because Jubi then disappeared. Even so, Orochimaru did nothing but laugh madly before speaking to his number two. Looks like things are going to be interesting from now on. Kabuto used. Well, that went better than I thought, Miyuki thought, looking over to a silent Naruto. She offered him a smile of reassurance. It was so much like the disgruntled elders of Konoha to pull off something like this off their asses. She really wished that nothing like this was posed again. Naruto showed his maturity and professionalism by refraining to call Koharu by any name. Miyuki had no doubt that he'd bit his lip from saying anything that would not appear professional. Naruto liked stating his thoughts, and sometimes he was inconsiderate of the feelings of those he was speaking to, but for the greater good he'd held back and allowed things to take a good course without painting Koharu in a black color. While I think that Konoha may have a hidden age, Naruto cut off the man who'd next open his mouth. I will have to cut you off, Kurihara-san, the blonde stated rather Sternly, please refrain from going where you're thinking of going. Koharu-san spoke her opinion whether she had an agenda or not. It is not up for discussion for this meeting. We don't want anyone to feel alienated. The tone he used put no comfort in the daimyo of the river country. While I don't agree with everything Koharu-san said, I do however have a question. How are you going to deal with the IWA issue? They are looking for your head, and will not rest until they have you, of course, since you're the head of the UN. This will affect us. Those who know me will believe me when I say this. I will handle the IWA issue. Whatever happens, it will not interfere with my work. You have my word. Those who knew him well enough wouldn't doubt him a bit, and he was glad that the majority knew him well enough to know that he never went back on his word. Saying you have my word is like giving the royal seal of approval. How another voiced out in any peaceful way I can think of. Naruto said. He then appeared thoughtful as a thought occurred to him. I was under the impression that this is a UN conference or a General Assembly, formerly not the Naruto conference. Are you people trying to tell me that you have no problems, no qualms with anyone, and you seem to be forgetting that I was not wrong to stop IWA from reaching Amagakure? You all know the Sandaime Tsuchikage well enough to tell you the truth. Even if I just knocked them out, because I am Namikaze, he would have still gone out for my head. Silence reigned for a few moments. Yesterday I told you that we were going to elect different committees that will be responsible for different tasks within the UN. The UNA only needs one committee, which is the NEC, and since the UN is the core body, it will be the one with different committees. First off, the National Executive Committee of the UNA will be comprised of leaders of each aligned nation. If we have 10 members within the alliance, then the NEC will have 10 members. This committee will be made to manage the alliance between the nations, make decisions regarding everything that will be included within the alliance. It will serve as the main body that will determine how things fold within the allied nations. To put it simply, all leaders will be put in charge of this alliance, and it will be you who will make decisions on what to do and how to move on forward. Treaties and trade agreements, threats posed by criminals, it will all be discussed here by this committee. Nothing will occur to your nations without the NEC approving it. The UN will also have its own executive committee. This committee will only be selected by me. It will be the main body that governs all that the UN does, while the EC of the UN governs all activities of the UN and oversees UNA. It doesn't have the power to overrule the UNA's committee, and it doesn't have the authority to over. The Naruto paused to catch his breath and allow the audience to digest everything. Though it was technically true that the UN has no control over the UNA, there were some elements of the UN's charter that gives the UN certain privileges should the UNA be going against the vision of the UN, and at times the committee can't make decisions. Naruto had made a good deal for this people. Even though the UNCC would be selected by him, the EC that had the final say was the UNA's. Naruto had practically constructed a stage for a play and gave it for them to play. Not even Konoha would disagree to something like this. However, if it was Danzo who was here, he would push for Konoha to hold more say in matters, since it was obviously the strongest village in all nations. Jiraiya was at least thankful that not even Koharu or Hamura would dare attempt to push for Konoha to be the controlling factor in the committee. It wasn't made based on the power of a nation, but all members held equal power. There was no bigger player, no lead actor. They all had equal roles. If they pushed for more power, it would only paint a picture of a power-hungry and controlling Konoha without any hand being raised. Naruto continued where he left off. I have selected the chair of the UNA's NEC and her deputy. The Mizukage and Konan-san both will be the chair and deputy respectively. Murmurs broke out after this. They were no doubt complaining about the fact that Naruto was selecting leaders for them in their committee. He had said it himself that he held no power despite being a member. Where's the democracy? And that it was amusing to Naruto than anything. He held out his right hand and motioned for Mei to take the fourth. The Mizukage calmly walked towards the center stage and stood on Naruto's right hand side. Silence settled, and I am Mei Terumi go Dame Mizukage. Mei started nicely. I have been working with Naruto on this for some time now, and other than Naruto there is no one who knows the laws and workings of this organization than me. The president chose me because of this. The UNA is still in its founding stages, and we want someone who is more familiar with the inner workings. Konan-san is the first member of the UN. Her post was given as an honor. If you feel that you do not like either of us as leaders of the UNA, then you're free to vote for it during the UNA's Executive Committee's conference. If you don't know, this is the UN's conference, not an executive meeting. To be more precise, this is a General Assembly. They couldn't vote on it now because non-executives were also in this meeting, and she had given them a good offer. Vote her out and elect someone they thought more worthy to chair the committee, and she would happily relinquish her seat. Now that there is no problem with that, I will announce the UN's committee. The chair will be Namikaze Naruto, deputy Sabaku Nogara. Additional members will be Konan Kurihara Masaki, leader of Takigakure, and finally whomsoever you choose as the Chair of the UNA's NEC will represent the committee in the UNCC. Masaki will act as General Secretary of the UN and Kurihara will serve as the Treasurer of the UN. The UNA will elect its own General Secretary during its conference May. Picked up where Naruto left off, there are also 2 more committees that will have to be formed and will need your participation. These committees are the Judicial Committee, which is responsible for the judiciary system of the UN, and the UNA. It will be responsible for creating laws. This committee does not fall under the control of anyone but its chair. However, they do report to the President of the UN and cannot approve of anything new law without the President's approval. The second committee is the Disciplinary Committee. It will have 2 bodies, the UN's police force and the UN's Supreme Court. This committee is an independent committee and is away from the influence of politics, and even the President of the UN. This committee is to work in ensuring that all laws are followed and discipline anyone breaking them according to the law created by the Judicial Committee. The police force will be a military force that will be responsible for maintaining peace and order within allied nations. They have the power and authority to arrest anyone without consent found guilty of injustice, except for Kages. They will need approval from a leader of which the suspect belongs to. If it is a Kage, approval from the Disciplinary Committee. Anyone marked international criminal will be arrested without consent of anyone. After a few moments of silence, Naruto took after May. The chair of the Judiciary and Disciplinary Committee will both earn seats in the UNCC. He said the Supreme Court will be responsible for delivering judgment to cases that are beyond the police force, such as members who violate the agreement, S-rank criminals, umbus, and leaders of villages, as well as active members within the structure of the UN. In short, anything that was S-rank will be handled by this court. We can now begin with the voting from members of both the Judicial and Disciplinary Committees. First, elect the nominees for different roles. Then we will begin with the voting. Once the nominees were made, members were given piece of paper to write who they have chosen. Once that was completed, they would put the sealed paper in a ballot, after which Naruto and Mei would count the votes, while everyone watches. The secret voting was done to reduce glares that would surely be sent to others for voting someone. It took some time, but Naruto and Mei concluded everything else and read out the votes. The elected candidates were presented before everyone. All these took place smoothly without any alterations. The smooth operation was appreciated by both Mei and Naruto, since it made things easy and ensured that they finished things in time. No one complained after the results. That went well. Mei said a bit tiredly. The vote counting and shouting out people's name took more effort and energy out of her. She hadn't thought it would be this tiring. Naruto looked better though. Yeah, Naruto said with a smile, thanks for your hard work. Since there's only conclusions left, you can rest. I will handle the rest, he said. Mei nodded and went back to her seat. Naruto stayed silent for a few moments as he allowed the murmurs to die down. There were no surprises on those who were selected in the posts for the committees. He had already set up the police force's structure. He would have sure head the department as well as the information gathering. There was no one who was more qualified to head the police force than sure. The man could operate the force while leaving his associates to gather intel with him in charge. He wouldn't have to worry about the force going out of control. It wouldn't be much work for sure, since there would be different divisions based on different nations. He had so far planned to build for HQ. For the police force, the base operation HQ will be situated in this island, as well as all offices of every department of the UN. Naruto resumed after silence had settled in the hall. Before you all leave here, you will be given the proposed charter of the UNA. You will look at them and offer your insight. When the UNA's NEC gathers for its first assembly next month, you will decide whether to keep the proposed charter or make a new one. You will also be given the Constitution of the UN, which will not be changed. The UN also has its own charter, which I will offer for your knowledge. Starting from next week, we will build an academy for the UN for the purposes of teaching medical ninjutsu in the river country. We will also build 4 offices of the UN in wind country, waterfalls, and the snow. The Supreme Court will be located in this island. Main offices of the UN will be located here. The UNA's HQ will be built in the fire country. When the Fire Lord gives us permission, we will all meet in the 3rd of January for another General Assembly in this island. With that, Naruto held up only those selected to be in the Disciplinary Committee and the Judicial Committee. They would need to hold out their first meetings soon enough, and since they were a part of the UN, he needed them to sign some forms that would bind them to the laws of the organization and their respective committees. For all fairness, Naruto wasn't included in any of these committees. He was already president and chair of the governing body of the UN to avoid holding more power in the UN, it was decided that he shouldn't take part in any of these committees. Konoha pleasant days were rather rare for Sakura. When days came out rolling one by one in recent weeks, things were supposed to have returned back to normal. When Naruto returned from his training trip, they were supposed to form Team 7 again and be one big happy family with her Kakashi-sensei Naruto and her beloved Sasuke-kun. But when Naruto came back, things looked bleak. Her dreams were dented just by the look on his face. Naruto had come back a completely different person. He was no longer that loud idiot she used to continuously yell at and blame for every wrong that occurred. The blonde had returned as an impassive teenager who cared little for smiling and hanging out with his friends as he once often did back in the days. He'd even refused to have lunch with her back in the days. He would have jumped to take the offer and even say it was a date. Sasuke was also another matter entirely. She couldn't even hold a good conversation with him. He would always brush her aside or just outright ignore her. Since his little defection was halted by Naruto's efforts, the Uchiha had come to truly embrace the dark side in him that was always lurking in the deep shelves of his heart. He had even become much colder and never gave anyone a second thought. Even so, Sakura had hoped that when Naruto returned he would lighten things up. His huge grins and loud voice, as well as his obnoxious proclamations, always made one feel something in the heart. She thought the charm would work on Sasuke and return him to normal, but it didn't happen. Sakura sighed, looking over to her friends. They'd gathered again, as they often did, to discuss matters relating their group. It was often after or before these kinds of meetings that she had even thought of stealing one of Tsunade's bottles and drown herself in the bitter taste of sake. Emotionally, it was draining, just as her job at the hospital drained her physical energy. Things are never the same without him, Ino said with a sigh. Even though he was no longer the loudmouth we all used to love and hate, he was still Naruto, and his absence is quite noticeable. She may not have been a big fan of the blonde during those genin days, those younger and foolish days, but she could never deny that he always had a certain touch and charm about him. He was just the type of person you'd look at and feel better for no reason, regardless of what. He was always their blonde friend, and more recently the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, and the only child of the Yondaime Hokage. The two people who were hit the most by all that was happening around Naruto were Hinata and Sakura. The latter still had a Team 7 fantasies and wished for the team to get back together. Even she knew that was a lost cause. It was never going to happen, not with Sasuke and Naruto the way they are. Hinata's reasons were obvious to anyone, even a blind man. Ino could understand that the girl was hurting since she never got to say those words to him. What a pity. And the mood suddenly drops below zero. Kiba mumbled silently. Well, it wasn't like there was any lively mood to work with in the first place. Things had never been the same since Naruto returned from his training trip, cold in more ways than one. Kiba preferred the idiot blonde who would be making him mad and grumble all the time. Shikamaru's side, since everything that has been happening recently, he couldn't blame anyone for being down. It didn't make much more difference to him how Naruto became after he returned. At least he wasn't troublesome. Still, a part of him really did appreciate the troublesome situation the blonde brought. His mind would have something to work on. I wonder if Naruto will return, Ino suddenly said. All eyes turned to her for explanation, except for Shikamaru's, who already guessed her reason. Ino wasn't the smartest, but she was quite perceptive of her surrounding. It did offer her a lot of gossip about. After all, don't tell me you guys haven't noticed. I mean, aside from a Tsunade-sama and Kakashi-sensei, Naruto has no real connection with anyone in Konoha. To make matters worse, he wasn't making any effort to be connected with anyone. All he was focused on was his work. It was all true. Moreover, the blonde stayed away from Konoha more often than not. It was not every day that you saw him within the walls of the village. He was always out doing his work or missions. If he was in the village, it was either he was with Lee and Gaia's students' home or at the office. He didn't spend much time at any other places than he used to. Ever since his return, he'd cut off a lonely figure. It shouldn't have been like that. Naruto was the son of the Yondaime Hokage, Konoha's greatest hero and Hokage. If Minato had been alive, the blonde would have been treated like a prince within Konoha. He would have been loved, and he would have grown to be a fine shinobi who thought of nothing but protecting Konoha. But things didn't turn out that way. Shikamaru had always noted that the villagers hated Naruto's existence, the reasons being now clear to anyone. He was a Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. What was even more baffling was the fact that Naruto didn't even attempt to explain things to them in a simple way so that they couldn't see him as the villagers did. It was almost like he didn't care what they would make of him. With the knowledge that he was a Jinchuriki, Sakura knew too well what Ino was saying, but she didn't want to believe it for her own happiness. I don't think that alone is enough, she said. It didn't happen recently, and if he really wanted to leave the village he would have done so when the villagers could still glare at him without shame. Shikamaru nodded in acceptance of Sakura's statement. I will have to Agree with Sakura on this one. He said it didn't mean that Ino was by any means wrong. No, both she and Sakura were correct. The only reason fled is because they wanted to tie him down. For someone in his position, being tied down was out of the question. Regardless of how you look at it, Naruto had no choice in the matter. All arrangements for the UN had already been made and leaders of nations were already waiting in anticipation for the event to begin. Konoha wanted to tie him down, and that meant he wouldn't be able to keep true to his responsibilities. If anything, and Tsunade should have known this. Naruto took all his responsibilities seriously, regardless of how trivial. If Naruto had allowed Tsunade to put him in a cell, he wouldn't have been able to fulfill his responsibilities as host and founder of the UN. Ultimately, all leaders he had spoken to wouldn't have been pleased with him. To them, it would seem he was making a mockery out of them. Shikamaru saw what Tsunade didn't see. The UN was bigger than Konoha. It wasn't just in Naruto's eyes, but everything about the organization spelled it was bigger than Konoha, than any other village or country he had seen. Its membership list, and knowing how Naruto had become since his return, it wasn't anything small. The simple fact was that Naruto chose the UN over Konoha, yet at the same time he offered Konoha a hand to follow him if it wishes to be part of the legacy he was building. The blonde had already retired his duties as a shinobi of Konoha. Officially, he was just a normal civilian. That meant that Tsunade had no authority to order him to do what she wanted. If he refused to follow Tsunade's orders, it wouldn't be insubordination, because he wasn't her subordinate to begin with. I wonder how things are going on that island though, Tenten said, appearing thoughtful. It was already the second day of the UN's conference, and she was really curious about how things were going there. No word was coming from the island. This only meant that one of the biggest events in the shinobi history was happening, unwatched by the eyes of the world. Will know when those sent return, Niji said calmly. I wonder why Tsunade-sama didn't go though. Ino said, I mean, Gaara and the Mizukage are all there, as well as all leaders of other nations. It's possibly for protection and the unresolved issues with Naruto. Knowing her temper, she wouldn't have been able to hold it down during the conference. Things tended to become nasty when she turned into one of her emotional outbursts with the Naruto of late. He wouldn't accept any of that, and that would only fuel the Godame further. Shikamaru decided to explain after Niji had spoken. Iwagakure and Kumo are not participating in the event. With how things are going in the moment, it would be dangerous for her and Jiraiya-sama to leave the village. A symbol of power has to stay behind to ensure that the village doesn't appear vulnerable to attack. What about Suna and Kiri? A few moments of silence settled in before Niji responded. There could be another reason behind Tsunade-sama's choice, he simply said, but chose not to indulge the idea any further than he'd said. In any case, Shikamaru's tone was a little hurried as he chose not continue with the current flow, as it wouldn't them anywhere good. Naruto will return to talk things over once things cool down. When things are calm, the Hokage will be rational. He said the last words in a whisper. More than anything, his voice picked up again as he continued, I can't say the same words about Sasuke though. It wasn't a secret that Sasuke has disappeared from the village, and nothing much was known about it. Looking at his track record, the conclusion was one: he may have defected. He can go. Kiba said casually, I don't really care about him, and he's more of an ass than anything. The predictable glare from Sakura was sent straight at the Inuzuka, who did not cower but held his head high in defiance. Naruto's quarters. The more things worked for Naruto, the more he smiled, and the more he had reasons to be happy. The more he was smiling, he returned to his former self. But that could all change in a matter of a second if the situation was calling for a more serious expression. That didn't concern Gaara, though. He was just happy that Naruto was smiling again. He was happy that the old Naruto would resurface again. It just needed some time and those around him to offer him a chance of happiness. It was just him, Naruto, and Mei Konan had been here not so long ago. In fact, she was with Naruto for some time before he and the Mizukage made it here. If the stone face of the former Akatsuki woman was any indication, Gaara could guess that they were discussing some serious matters. The room they were in wasn't that big, but it was big enough. Once you entered from the entrance, this was the room that greeted you. On the wall on the right side there was a shelf sporting a number of scrolls. There were no books in the center. There was a wooden table surrounded by 3 couches on the left side of the room. There was another door going towards other rooms. Gaara was sitting on the center couch, which was faced with the large TV that didn't work since there was no signal around the island. Mei was at the right side, and the left was vacated as Naruto had excused himself not too long ago. His brow furrowed when Naruto returned with a small bottle, possibly sake, and 3 saucers. Naruto had always stated that he wasn't a fan of drinking, even when celebrating. Naruto placed the saucers on the table before pouring the sake. This is some of the finest sake you'll ever drink. It is from the hidden village of the Toads, the blonde said a bit happily. He then pushed the saucers to each side before taking his seat. So your summons is live like us, Mei commented as she sipped in the sake. The moment bitter taste touched her inside, she felt small tremors throughout her body. The taste was just intoxicating. It was unlike anything she'd ever tasted Before this is really good, much better than the sake from Kumo. The village in the Lightning Country was known for its finest sakes, and there probably wasn't any land that produced better sake than them. I haven't tasted sake from Kumo in these rare moments. I only drink this sake, Naruto said before downing everything inside his saucer. Before placing it on the table, he didn't look he was going to pour himself another round. Gaara had even yet to touch his. The Kazekage shook his head, trying to kill off some thoughts, but before he could speak, Maid beat him to it. You should bring some of this to our date, she said, smiling. Gaara's brow quirked at that. He thought there was something going on between Naruto and Miyuki. No, it wasn't just his thought. Even Temari thought as much, given their recent interactions and the fact that Naruto had been staying in her palace over the past days. He could say that indeed something was going on. So, if it was so, why a date with Mei? I wouldn't want you to be drunk on our date, Mei, Naruto said with a small smile. It wouldn't do well with my conscience if something happens while you're drunk. I'd think that I took advantage of your state. I'm a big girl and I've been drinking for too long to get drunk on a good night. Besides, what could the president do to his chair that she wouldn't like? A sly smile found its way onto her blue lips. I've hanged around people who can do many things to drunk people, and I've picked some of those habits. I assure I am quite able to replicate the pattern. Those people would be none other than Anko. The snake mistress was a lot of things, and she certainly knew how to enjoy herself, drunk or not. Well, do bring the sake so I can see this. We won't know if you truly can replicate the pattern unless we give you the stage, now won't we? Before Naruto could respond, Gaara cleared his throat. As much as I would like to watch this scene, well, that was an understatement. He certainly didn't wish to be a part of this kind of train. I believe you called us here for a reason, Naruto. If you haven't noticed, your guests are already starting to leave. Naruto sighed before adopting a neutral look. I wish to inform you that I will establish a special unit which will be called United Covert Corps, in short UCC. They will answer directly to me and will be responsible for covert missions as well as keeping an eye on things. A moment of silence passed before Gaara broke it. Are you thinking of having the UN having its own darkness? While I will admit every village has its own darkness, but we can't run the risk of getting out because it could be disastrous. Naruto shook his head. If I wanted the dark side, I wouldn't have told you about this, he said ever so simply. We're living in a world that is cruel, Gaara. Evil is always lurking. Vultures are always parading in the heavens searching for prey. Children and women are being tormented every day by perverted vermin. You cannot rid of all this without dirtying your hands. I am prepared to dirty my hands. I will, however, not do anything that will jeopardize our mission. So what is the purpose of the UCC? Like I said, covert missions. Do highly ranked missions away from the public eye, but that doesn't mean that their missions are dark. It only means the way of operation is much efficient and it attracts little or no attention. The UCC will work on those silent missions amongst other things, but I assure you I will not have them do anything corrupted. Naruto said he wasn't forming another Rupe. We'll work with your umbus. I wish for your nations to work well together. Will you by any chance request that we send you the troops for this unit? Gaara asked. Naruto shook his head. The security forces in this island will be part of the UCC, and Conan has offered me more than enough, he said. That said, I have another matter. I am going to tell you I will turn Yuzu into a village. Once more, are you serious? I am quite serious, Mizukage Dano, Naruto stated. I wanted to preserve the ruins as part of history or something of sentimental value, but I have discovered that there are many who do not have a place to call home. As such, I will rebuild 2/3 of the island and keep some ruins around. If I can have more people surrounding these UN buildings, it will make things lively. Even when the next General Assembly comes, this place will not be dead silent. There are people who are going to hire to be UN staff. They will have to stay within this island for their work. It will be good for them to have other people around. Should the Fire Lord deny us permission to build the UN's academy in his country, I will build it within this island. This way it offers us the opportunity to keep our training secret from unwanted eyes. Should the parents of the children wish to be closer to their children, they will be welcome to move into the island. Gaara understood well enough. He understood that Naruto would be offering a home to those who didn't have a home. He understood it perfectly. But do you know what this will mean? Naruto the blonde nodded. I will have to remain here and oversee things, even if it is only a little. The people will need a leader naturally. That will cause problems with Konoha, but I am prepared to tackle them, he said. Easier said than done. Mei said he looked quite serious about the matter, and she could guess that he wasn't going to back down. Well, his reasons made sense, and she would support him. But if there is anything you need, come to me. Thank you, Mei, Naruto said sincerely. Gaara sighed. He was forced to say those words. Shikamaru, love, this is going to be troublesome, he said, but I have nothing against it. You will be offering the world a better service than you'd be staying in Konoha. Your choice is what is expected from the leader of a peace organization, but this will open doors for more threats. Naruto sighed. This will be where I will need your support the most. He suddenly stopped and frowned noticeably. Something wrong? No, Naruto said. I just have some guests, he said. It didn't need a Smart person to guess who these guests were. No doubt it was the Konoha group. I guess we will take our leave then. Gaara said, my clones will send you home after you finish packing your things, Naruto said, facing Gaara. He then turned to May. Expect my presence in the next few days. I will need to settle things here before thinking of other matters. May nodded. Just don't keep me waiting, Naruto smiled. I won't, that's a promise.